Saudis, got another headline. From it says here, Saudis and China dump treasuries. Foreign central banks liquidate a record $346 billion in United States paper. Zero Hedge reported. 1 month ago, it says here, the Fed's update of treasuries held in custody, there was something noted that was troubling. The number dropped sharply, declining by over $27.5 billion in 1 week. The biggest weekly drop since January 2015, pushing the total amount of custodial paper to $2.8 trillion, the lowest since 2012. 1 month later, we refresh this chart and find that in the latest weekly update, foreign central banks continued their relentless liquidation of U.S. paper held in the Fed's custody account, which tumbled by another $22.3 billion in the past week, pushing the total amount of custodial paper to $2.8 trillion, another fresh post-2012 low. Then today, in addition to the Fed's custody data, says here we also got the latest monthly Treasury International Capital data, which showed that the troubling trend presented last 1 month ago has accelerated. Recall that a month ago, it was reported that in the latest 12 months, it was observed a not so stealthy, in fact, quite massive $343 billion in Treasury selling by foreign and central banks. This was during the period of July 2015 through July 2016. Something truly unprecedented in size and scope. Now, I appreciate Tyler Durden over at Zero Hedge who writes these articles. He goes on to say, fast forward to today when in the latest monthly update, that of July, we find that what until a month ago was merely a record $343 billion in offshore central bank sales in the LTM period ending July 30th. 1 month later, this number has risen to a new all-time high, $346.4 billion, or well over a third of a trillion in treasuries sold in the past 12 months. Among the biggest sellers on a market price basis, not surprisingly, was China, which in July sold over $34 billion in United States paper, the actual underlying number, while different as this particular series is adjusted for mark-to-market variations, will be similar. The biggest monthly dump going back to 2012 and bringing its total to $1.1 trillion, the lowest total since 2012. It wasn't just China though, folks. Saudi Arabia also continues to sell its TSY holdings, and in August, its stated holdings, which again have to be adjusted for MTM, dropped from $96.5 billion to $93 billion, the lowest since the summer of 2014. As we pointed out over 1 month ago, what is becoming increasingly obvious is that both foreign central banks, sovereign wealth funds, reserve managers, and virtually every other official institution in possession of United States paper is liquidating their holdings at very troubling pace. In some cases, like China, this has offset devaluation pressure. In others, such as Saudi Arabia, it is to provide the funds needed to offset the collapse of the petrodollar and to backstop the country's soaring budget deficit. But who are they selling to? The answer, at least for now, is private demand. In other words, just like in the stock market, the retail investor is the final bag holder. So when it comes to U.S. Treasuries, private investors, both foreign and domestics, are soaking up hundreds of billions in central bank holdings. We wonder if they would do that knowing who is selling to them. Meanwhile, just 2 months ago, yields had tumbled to near all-time lows. Suddenly, the picture is inverted and long yields are suddenly surging on concerns the BOJ, the Fed, and maybe even the ECB will soon taper their purchase of the long end. What happens if the addition to the relentless selling from foreign official institutions, private sellers, also declare a buyer's strike? The answer: more Fed monetization of U.S. debt will be the most likely outcome, aka more quantitative easing. We bring this up because, amusingly, the Fed is still harboring some naive hope that it can and will raise rates in the coming week and or months. ZeroHedge.com reports, listen folks, Saudis, China, Dump treasuries. Foreign central banks liquidate. Our paper dollar is becoming less and less wanted. Do they know something we don't? Is our dollar losing value, or did they just suddenly have a bad taste for our currency? We know that we're living in the last days. We know that a financial collapse is biblical prophecy. We know that there is coming a new world order. And this new world order, which is prophesied in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verses 23 through 26. Also in chapter 8, verses 23 and 26. Also in the book of Revelation, chapter 13, will usher in a one world currency, a one world religion, and a one world government. We already have the one world government that is called the United Nations. We already have virtually the one world religion, virtually. And this is a comprising of all religions becoming one. And that's already taking place. Some call it Chrislam. Others are calling it, what's it called, ecumenism. And but there is definitely a converging of a one world religion taking place. Now what's needed, all that is left, is the one world currency. In order for the one world currency to be established, we must see a destruction of the United States currency. Our currency still holds leverage on the world scene. And we are seeing a current and continued, I should say, devaluation of our currency. It's nothing that's really talked about. We have mentioned here at Open Your Eyes People, or discussed how the stock markets continue to have their numbers played with. There's continued quantitative easing, and it's a mess any way you look at it. You put money in the bank, it's not yours anymore. You want to take money out of the bank, you got to get 50,000 questions in order to take a substantial amount or a certain amount out. So everything worldwide, because everything's connected, everything has got, just like an octopus, is all connected. And once the U.S., and this is what it's going to come soon, because we're coming to the time of the rise of the fourth kingdom, the rise of the beast system. When the U.S. collapses financially, there will be a house of cards that will collapse right along with it. The dominoes will fall. A bigger shift will take place. And the rise of the one world currency, also known as the mark of the beast, will be dominant.